Thanks for joining us. You're in the private sector now. Debt is something that, the private sector has got to pay attention to it for every company. And when it gets too high, you can just feel it in what it does to the operations. Eventually, we need to think about it. The Republicans are coming under a lot of criticism for not being able to agree with each other about how to do this. But there are some that genuinely are worried about how much the tab already is and how much more we add to it. That's part of the equation, right?
Joe, one of the frustrating things that I have as a Republican is just always seems at a time where we just have the opportunity to coalesce behind a strategy, we instead turn into a circular firing squad. And I worry right now because there's a $3 trillion plan on the table that Nancy Pelosi has put out there. It's been out there for 2 months, so the Democrats have coalesced around her plan. But unfortunately, my side, we as Republicans have not sort of coalesced around what we want. Now, I think what we should want is we should want the economy to start growing again. And, we should lay out in some very, in no uncertain terms, first and foremost, we've got to go and get these schools back open again safely, period. And it's not about forcing them to open. It's about leading and saying, hey, we have XYZ 7-point plan to open these schools. Because I know in my conversations with business leaders around the country, that's the most pressing issue right now is how we're going to get our workforce back into place. But I agree with you. It's again, if we're not certain about the way we want to see a package put together, all it's going to do is go rack up more spending. I mean, that's sort of the lowest common denominator default that will happen.
Well, you kind of gave me both answers there. So you think the Republicans do look bad and open up themselves to some criticism from the Democrats, but then again, you admit that there are some Republicans that probably just aren't comfortable with the T number just being thrown around and trillion here, trillion there constantly.
No question. I'm not comfortable hearing that either, but somehow, though, we've got to be more consistent in our discipline when it comes to the message about being a fiscal conservative. I mean, that's what the issue here right now is, and it's a real problem. I worry about, the political pressures that come about when you're 3 or 4 months out from an election. It's very tempting, especially the senators who are in cycle that are on a bubble. It's easy to say, hey, well, we're going to want to go throw money so they can go and show their constituents that they care about them. Where at the end of the day, I think what the voters will do when they go into the ballot boxes, they're going to look to see who's leading, who's got a vision for how we're going to see this country get back on track, how we can convince the public that things are safe, that we've got a plan to make it safe for them, their families, to get back into the kind of routine as close as we can while we're still battling the virus.
So how do you see it playing out? Who's going to take the lead next week? McConnell, Mnuchin? The president wanted the payroll tax. That's not going to be in anymore. So, and then will it be a deal that the Democrats are comfortable with if there's liability protection and if it's if it's only $1 trillion or way below $3 trillion?
Well, there's sort of three I think, three real issues that are going to make sure that there is a bill that comes out. And one is what Mitch McConnell has been saying from day one. It's concerns that I hear in the private sector every day. It's about liability protection. That was afforded to the PPE manufacturers early on in this crisis to make sure that we didn't have all these lawsuits flying so that it would inhibit the manufacturing of PPE to protect our healthcare workers. Same thing for businesses. We got to make sure. So I think that will happen. And I think the state aid that Nancy Pelosi has prioritized, and if that's going to happen because it's connected to the schools. And as I said before, that should be priority one. How do we safely reopen our schools should be priority. And then lastly, I think the real action forcing event, especially for the Democrats, is this unemployment insurance benefit. And the unemployment insurance benefit, as we know, is a federal bonus on top of what states already provide. And in many instances around the country, people who are unemployed are getting more than they would if they went back to work. So I think that's a legitimate opposition in terms of the Republican cry right now is how in the world can we provide incentives for people to stay home when they really need to get back to work so we can all sort of resume some type of normal existence. So those three things I think are going to make sure that a bill passes. It probably won't be by the August 7th deadline. I think most likely it'll flip over into the following week, and finally there'll be some consensus or some agreement. Without all Republicans, I think we're going to see a lot of Republican no votes. You're also going to see some Democrat no votes, because I think the people like AOC and Bernie Sanders and the people like that, they're going to say, hey, this is not enough money, and they're going to want some money thrown in for the election. You know, that's their big issue as we round the corner into the fall.